In this video, we are going to see about the thread synchronization, and basically we are going to focus on the problem which is known as a producer-consumer problem. So to understand this concept, we are going to have two threads, the producer thread and consumer thread. So both of the thread would be having one thing in common. They are going to have one number which is a shared variable among these threads. Okay, both of the threads can access this number, and here what is going to happen that the producer thread is going to generate a number, some random number, and the consumer thread is going to use that number. So initially that nothing is assigned to the number. Okay, so what is going to happen that the producer thread is going to generate some number through some random procedure and assign that number over here. And once that is available over here, that consumer thread will use that number to check whether the number is odd or even. We are going to implement very simple application over here. So initially, suppose yes, these two are thread, like producer is also thread and consumer is also thread. So what is going to happen that we are going to have like a statement in our program, producer dot start. What it will do, it will start executing the producer thread, and consumer dot start, this is going to start the consumer thread. Now here we know that the operating system runs the thread independently. Okay, and it may happen that the producer thread might not have assigned any number to this number thread, sorry, this number variable, but the consumer may be like trying to get the number from here. Okay, so here that what is the problem, that producer has not produced the number, but the consumer is trying to get the number from here, and there is some sort of inconsistency in the system. So how to address this problem, that is what we are going to see. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to have some sort of locking mechanism. Okay, what do we require? We require some sort of locking mechanism. That means that we are going to use some variable, like we are going to use the variable like produce variable. Okay, this would be the boolean variable, and another one is consume variable. Initially both would be set to false, so that whenever consumer thread will try to get the number, at that time first it will check whether the produce thread, what is the value of produce variable. If it is false, then it means that the number has not been set by the producer thread. Okay, so what is going to happen that whenever the producer will produce a number, okay, there will be a method called produce method. Okay, so in this method the producer thread will create one random number and assign that number to this number variable. Okay, and once that number is assigned, okay, after that what it will do, it will notify to the consumer thread that I have assigned some number to this number variable. Okay, and it will set this produce variable. Okay, is what going to happen. Now same thing is going to happen that when suppose the consumer thread might have started execution first. Okay, and it will check that what is the value of produce. At that time the produce value may be false. So what this consumer thread will do, it will go into the state called wait, and it will wait until and unless the number would be set by the producer. Okay, so as we have just discussed, that assume that the producer thread has produced the number and assign that number to the number variable and notifying to this waiting consumer thread that I have assigned the number. Okay, so consumer thread will consume the number, it will consume the number, will do the processing, it will check whether the number is odd or even, and it will produce the result. Okay, and once it is done, then what it will do, it will set this consume variable to true. Okay, so that what will happen, the producer thread can produce the next number. Okay, so here in the produce method, what is going to happen that before producing a new number, the producer thread has to check whether the number has been consumed or not, and for that the that producer thread is going to check this variable, the consume variable. So if the consume variable is false, what does it mean? That the producer should not generate a new number. Okay, so that is the logic to implement this particular problem. Okay, so we are going to implement this thing, right? That we are going to see that how to implement this produce method, consume method, notify, wait. Okay, everything that we are going to do in our implementation. So I have already implemented this problem. Okay, so I'm just going to explain that how I have implemented. I have implemented this problem with the help of concept called inner class. Okay, so what I have done is I have created the object of the runnable interface, and obviously we cannot create the object of interface until and unless we implement it as an inner class. So here that is what we have done. Okay, we have created one variable called number variable, right? And we have declared two variables, that is a produce and the consume. Okay, and then inside the run method, what we are going to do. Okay, but before going to this run method, let me show you that what else I have written. So I have created these two threads, two different threads, the producer thread and the consumer thread. Okay, assign the producer name to the first thread, that is a producer, and assign the name consumer thread to consumer. And these are arguments, that is the argument of runnable, came from this line number 6. Okay, then what I'm doing, that I'm just starting the producer thread as well as the consumer thread. Okay, and then what I'm doing inside run, I'm just like checking what is the name of the thread. If the name of the thread is producer, then I'm just calling the produce method. That means that only producer thread will call or run the produce method, where the produce method is. So produce method is over here, and what the produce method is doing, it is going to be iterated for 10 times, and it checks that whether it has produced the number earlier or not. Okay, if it has not generated the number earlier, okay, then it will generate a new random number and will set that variable to true, and it will call the notify all, so that if another thread or the consumer thread is waiting that number supposed to be set, then it will be awakened. Okay, so that is what we have done over here. Now let's go to the another one, that is else if, that if the thread name is consumer, then it should call the consume method. So what is that in the consume method? Let's try to see. So in the consume method, you can see that here we are checking that whether the number has been produced or not. Okay, the same thing that we are doing over here. Okay, so if the number is produced, okay, then it not produced, then it will go to the wait state. Okay, and it will go to the wait state for infinite wait. Okay, right? So what will happen here, the producer thread will remain in the block state. Okay, and it will wait that until and unless the notify method would be executed by the producer thread. So here, that what this notify all method will do, it will send a signal to the waiting thread. So which thread is waiting over here? The consumer thread. Okay, so the consumer thread is going to come out from this, and then what it will do, it will check whether I have already consumed the number or not. So initially it is what, it is false. Okay, so this is going to become true, and it will check whether the number is divisible by 2 or not. If it is not, then it will declare whether the number is even or odd. Otherwise, what else that it required to do, that once it is done, then it is calling the notify, or it can also call the notify all. That is also possible, right? Why do we require notify all? It is required because that once the producer thread will produce the number, it will check whether the number has been consumed or not. If the number is not consumed, okay, then it will go to the wait state, right? And once that consumer will consume the number, then it is going to send the notify signal to the waiting thread. Okay, so in this case our producer thread is waiting over here. It will come out from then, it will get the idea that the number has been consumed, so that value would be set to false. Okay, and it will complete iteration and it will start the next iteration, right? So here what is going to happen, that it is notifying all and it is setting the that variable like produce is equal to false and consume is equal to true. That is what is happening over here. Okay, so here that I don't require this, that consume is equal to false. What I can do, that this consume is equal to false can be set over here also, right? Once the number is produced, okay, and if it is not consumed, then I have to set it to false. Okay, so this is the logic, and if we run this application, then we are going to get the output. Okay, the output is that the producer thread is going to generate some number. Okay, and the consumer thread is going to declare whether the number is even or odd, and after that it will display the message that number is consumed. Okay, so let me run the application and let me show you the output. So here you can see the output, that producer has generated the number and it is declaring that whether the number is odd and number is consumed. Okay, so 10 times that this is going to be executed. So this is all about the thread synchronization, and we have understood the problem of the producer and consumer. Now here the point is what, the method which we have used, the notify all method and wait method, these are not part of the thread class. These are the method of object class. So if you see the documentation of the wait, right, you will surprisingly you will find that this method belongs to the object class. Okay, so let me show you the notify method. Right, so here you can see the notify all, wait are part of the object class, but we can use all this method with the threads. Okay, so let me go back to our example. So one more thing, when we use the notify all and the wait method, at that time we must have to use those method inside the synchronized block, otherwise we will get the error. Okay, so this is all about this producer and consumer problem. I'm going to put this code onto the GitHub repository. Guys, my humble request to all of you that please go through the code and try to run it. That's it for this video.